Yeah, welcome to the third chapter of Clifton Chronicles. Only time will tell. In the last chapter, we have seen the Harry meeting old Jactor and he being given a silver coin and something was sent to buy something for him. Now, let us look at what is there in the third chapter. Maisie waited until she heard the front door slam, was confident that Stan was on his way to work before she announced, "I've been offered a job as a waitress at the Royal Hotel." No one seated round the table responded, as conversations at breakfast was supposed to follow a regular pattern and not to take anyone by surprise. Harry had a dozen of questions he wanted to ask, but waited for his grandma to speak first. See how respectful the little guy Harry is. When he has many questions, he let his grandma to speak. She simply busied herself with pouring another cup of tea, as if she hadn't heard her daughter in the first place. She's telling that the grandma of Harry is ignoring Maisie's words. "Will someone please say something?" said Maisie. "I didn't even realize you were looking for another job," ventured Harry. "I wasn't sad, Maisie. But last week, Mr. Frampton, the manager of the Royal, dropped into Tilly's for coffee. He came back several times and then he offered me a job. I thought you were happy at the tea shop," said the grandma, finally joining in. "After all, Miss Tilly pays well and the house suit. I'm happy," said Harry's mom. "But Mr. Frampton's offering me £5 a week and half of all the tips. I could be bringing home as much as £6 on a Friday," Grandma said, there with her mouth wide open. "Will you have to work nights?" asked Harry, once he finished licking Stan's porridge bowl. "No, I won't," Maisie said, ruffling her son's hair. "And what's more, I'll get one day off a fortnight." "Are your clothes posh enough for a grand hotel like Royal?" asked Grandma. "I'll be supplied with a uniform and a fresh white apron. Apron is kind of a chef cloth every morning. The hotel even has its own laundry." "I don't doubt it," said Grandma. "But I can think of one problem we are going to have to learn to live with." "And what's that, Mum?" asked Maisie. "You could end up earning more than Stan, and he's not going to like that. Not one little bit." "Then he'll just have to learn to live with it, won't he?" said Grandpa, offering an opinion for the first time in weeks. The extra money was going to come in useful, especially after what had happened at the Holy Nativity. Maisie had been about to leave the church after the service when Miss Monday walked purposefully down the aisle towards her. "Can I have a private word with you, Miss Clifton?" she asked, before turning and walking back down the aisle. It is nothing but a place between two rows of chairs. Actually, what we see is in the church, like a pathway between two rows of two chair bunches towards the what's this vestry. Vestry is kind of a room. See, vestry is kind of a room allocated in the church. Maisie chased after her like a child in a pied purpose way. She feared the worst. What had Harry been up to this time? Maisie followed the choir mistress into the vestry and felt her legs give way when she saw the Reverend Watts, Mr. Halcombe, and another gentleman standing there. As Miss Monday closed the door quietly behind her, Maisie began to shake uncontrollably. The Reverend Watts placed an arm around her shoulder. "There's nothing for you to worry about, my dear," he assured her. "On the contrary, I hope you will feel we are the bearers of glad tidings," he added, offering her a seat. Maisie sat down, but still couldn't stop shaking. Once everyone was seated, Miss Monday took over. "We wanted to talk to you about Harry, Miss Clifton," she began. Maisie pursed her lips. What could the boy possibly have done to bring three such important people together? "I'll not beat about the bush," the choir mistress continued. "The music master sent beats as approached me and asked if Harry would consider entering his name for one of his choral scholarships. But he's very happy at Holy Nativity," said Maisie. Any case, where is St. Bede's Bridge? I have never even heard of it. St. Bede's is not a church, said Miss Monday. It's a choir school that supplies choristers for St. Mary Redcliffe, which was famously described by Queen Elizabeth as the fairest and godliest church in all the land. So would he have to leave his school as well as the church? Asked her. Try to look upon it as an opportunity that might change his whole life, Miss Clinton, said Mr. Halcombe, speaking for the first time. Not only he have to mix with the posh clever boys. I doubt if there will be many children at St. Bede's cleverer than Harry, said Mr. Halcombe. He is the brightest lad I've ever taught. Although we get the occasional boy into the grammar school, none of our pupils has ever been offered the chance of a place at St. Bede's before. There's something else you need to know before you make up your mind, said the Reverend Watts. Maisie looked even more anxious. Harry would have to leave home during term time because St. Bede's is a boarding school. Then it is out of the question, said Maisie. I couldn't afford it. That shouldn't prove a problem, said Miss Monday. If Harry is offered a scholarship, the school would not only waive any fees but also award him a bursary of £10 a term. But is this one of those schools? The fathers wear suits and ties and mothers don't work? Asked Maisie. It's worse than that, said Miss Monday, trying to make light of it. The masters wear long black gowns and motorboats. Motorboats kind of cap on their head. Still, said the Reverend Watts, joining in, at least there would be no more leatherings for Harry. They're just far more refined, and they'll just cane the boys, just beating with the canes. Only Maisie didn't laugh. But why would he want to leave home? She asked. He's settled at the Marywood Elementary and he won't want to give up being senior chorister at Holy Nativity. I must confess that my loss would be even greater than his, said Miss Monday. But then I am sure our Lord would not want me to stand in the way of such gifted children, simply because of my own selfish desires, she added quietly. Even if I agree, said Maisie, playing her last card, that doesn't mean Harry will. I had a word with the boy last week, admitted Mr. Halcombe. Of course, he was apprehensive about such a challenge, but if I recall, his exact words were, I'd like to have a go, sir, but only if you think I'm good enough. But he added before Maisie could respond, he also made it clear that he wouldn't even consider the idea unless his mother agreed. Harry was both terrified and excited about the by the thought of taking the entrance exam, but just as anxious the entrance exam, but just about failing the letting so many people down as he was about to succeeding and having to leave home. During the following term, he never once missed a lesson at Marywood. When he returned home, each evening he went straight up to the bedroom he shared with Uncle Stan, where with the aid of the candle he stayed for hours that until then he hadn't realized existed. There were even occasions when his mother found Harry sound asleep on the floor, open books scattering around him. Every Saturday morning he continued to visit old Jack, who seemed to know a great deal about St. Bede's and to teach Harry about so many other things, almost as if he knew where Mr. Halcombe had let off. Saturday afternoons, much to disgust of Uncle Stan, Harry no longer accompanied him to Ashton Gate towards Bristol City, but returned to Marywood, where Mr. Halcombe gave him extra lessons. It would be years before Harry worked out that Mr. Halcombe was also foregoing his regular visits to support the Robins in order to teach him. As the day of examination drew nearer, Harry became even more frightened of failure than of the possibility of success. On the appointment day, Mr. Halcombe accompanied a star pupil to the Carlton Hall where the 2-hour examination would take place. He left Harry at the entrance to the building with the words, Don't forget to read each question twice before you even pick up your pen. A piece of advice he had repeated several times during the past week. This is the kind of advice that every student will get from his or her teachers. Harry smiled nervously and shook hands with Mr. Halcombe as if they were old friends. He entered the examination hall to find about 60 other boys standing around in small groups, chattering. It was clear to Harry that many of them already knew each other. Well, he didn't know anyone. Despite this, one or two of them stopped talking and glanced at him as he made his way to the front of the hall, trying to look confident. About Barrington, Cap, or Clifton, Dickens fly. Harry took his place at the desk, the front row, just moments before the clock struck 10. Several masters in the long black gowns and mortarboards swept in, placed examination papers on the desks in front of each candidate. "Gentlemen," said a master standing at the front of the hall, who had not taken part in the distribution of papers. "My name is Mr. Frobisher, and I am your invigilator. You have 2 hours in which to answer 100 questions. Good luck." A clock he couldn't see struck 10. All around him, pens dipped into inkwells and began to scratch furiously across paper, but Harry simply folded his arms, leaned on the desk, and read each question slowly. He was among the last to pick up his pen, strictly following his Mr. Monday's advice. Harry couldn't know what that Mr. Holcomb was pacing up and down on the pavement outside, feeling far more nervous than his pupil, or that his mother was glancing up at the clock in foyer of the Royal Hotel every few minutes as she served morning coffee, or that Miss Monday was kneeling in silent prayer before the altar at Holy Day. See, all these, see, this gives the importance of parents, this gives the struggle they undergo, this gives the caution that parents and teachers took towards their lovely student. Moments after the clock had struck 12, an examination paper was gathered up, and boys were allowed to leave the hall. Some laughing, some frowning, others thoughtful. When Mr. Holcomb first saw Harry, his heart sank. "Was it that bad?" he asked. Harry didn't reply until he was certain no other boy could overhear his words. "Not at all what I expected," he said. "What do you mean?" asked Mr. Holcomb anxiously. "The questions are far too easy," replied Harry. Mr. Holcomb felt that he had never been paid a greater compliment in this life. "Two suits, madam. Grey. One blazer navy. 5 shirts white. 5 stiff collars white. 6 pairs of calflint socks grey. 6 sets of undergarments white. One cent beads tie." The shop assistant checked the list carefully. "I think that covers everything." "Oh no. The boy will also need a school cap." He reached under the counter, opened a black drawer, and removed a red and black cap, which he placed on Harry's head. "A perfect fit," he pronounced. And he smiled at her son with considerable pride, as if every mother wants in his heart. Harry looked every inch a St. Beats boy. "That will be £3, 10 shillings, and £6, madam." Maisie tried not to look too dismayed. "Is it possible to purchase any of these items second-hand?" she whispered, as she being thus striving to earn a penny. "No, madam, this is not a second-hand shop," said the assistant. "I had already decided that this customer would not be allowed to open the account." Maisie opened her purse, handed over £4 notes, and waited for the change. He was relieved that Saint Bede had paid the first term's bursary in advance, especially as she still needed to buy 2 pairs of leather shoes, black with laces, 2 pairs of gym shoes, white with laces, and 1 pair of slippers. Assistant coughed. "The boy will also need 2 pairs of pajamas and a dressing gown." "Yes, of course," said Maisie, hoping she had enough money left in her purse to cover the cost. "And am I to understand that boy is a choral scholar?" asked the assistant, looking more closely at the list. "Yes, he is," Maisie replied proudly. "Then he'll also require 1 cassock, 2 surplices, white, and a St. Bede's medallion." Maisie wanted to run out the shop. "Those items will be supplied by the school when he attends the first choir practice," the assistant added before handing over her change. "Will you be requiring anything else, madam?" "No, thank you," said Harry, who picked up the 2 bags, grabbed his mother by the arm, and led her quickly out of the T.C. Marsh, Taylor of Distincton. Harry spent the Saturday morning before he was due to report to St. Bede's with old Jack. "Are you nervous about going to new school?" asked old Jack. "No, I am not," said Harry defiantly. Old Jack smiled. "I'm terrified," he admitted. "So is every new bug, as you will be called. Try to treat the whole thing as if you are starting out an adventure to a new world where everyone begins as equals." But the moment they hear me speak, they realize I'm not either equal. Possibly, but the moment they hear you sing, they realize that they are not you or equal. Most of them will have come from rich families with servants. That will only be a consolation for most stupid ones, said old Jack. And some of them will have brothers at the school, and even fathers and grandfathers who were there before them. Your father was a fine man, said old Jack. None of them will have a better mother, of that I can assure you. You knew my father? Said Harry, unable to mask his sadness. Knew it would be an exaggeration, said old Jack, but I observed him from afar, as have many others who have worked at the docks. He was a decent, courageous, God-fearing man. But do you know how he died? Asked Harry, looking old Jack in the eye, hoping he would at last get an honest reply to the question that had troubled him for so long. What have you been told? Asked old Jack cautiously. That he was killed in a great war, but was born in 1920. Even I can work out that cannot be possible. Old Jack didn't speak for some time. Harry remained on the edge of his seat. He was certainly badly wounded in the war, but you're right. It was not cause of his death. Then how did he die? Asked Harry. If I know, I would tell you, replied old Jack. But there were so many rumors flying around that time that I wasn't sure who to believe. However, there are several men, and three in particular, who undoubtedly know the truth about what happened that night. My Uncle Stan must be one of them, said Harry. But who are the other two? Old Jack hesitated before he replied. Phil Haskins and Mr. Hugo. Mr. Haskins, the Django, said Harry. Who didn't give me the time of the day? And who is Mr. Hugo? Hugo Barrington, the son of Sir Walter Barrington. The family who owned the shipping line? The same, replied old Jack, fearing he had gone too far. See, it's like the line that came from the old Jack Thor, his father. Every time no one is telling this guy Harry how his father died. Even the moment after asking even old Jack Thor, he replied that he even don't know. Only three people know, that is Uncle Stan, the Django, and this one Barrington, Mr. Walter Barrington. The Barrington family owns a shipping line. And are they a decent, courageous, God-fearing men? Sir Walter is among the finest men I have ever known. But what about his son, Mr. Hugo? Not cut from the same cloth, I fear, said the old Jack without further explanation. Yeah, in this. So, if you like the video, please like it, please subscribe to it, and if you have any suggestions regarding to which book you need to explain or which book we need to be discussed over here, please type it in comments. Thank you.